All right, cool. We are live, and I hope you guys like that new intro. It's pretty hype worthy. Really excited to be here today. As always, I am TJ Highland with my co-host Ben Stein, and this week we have Anthony Cofrancesco of PickFu. Anthony, how's it going?
Hey guys, thanks so much for having me on the show today. Doing well.
Absolutely. So this week is a little bit different than some other weeks. I think heading into Q4, technically 7 days in, and what it looks like. I really wanted to bring on PickFu to highlight their service and their solution because I think it's something that sellers and businesses can use right now and have a meaningful effect on their business this holiday season and moving forward. So Anthony is the industry liaison for PickFu, has quite a bit of background in marketing and digital ads, actually has worked at Amazon as well. So Anthony, you want to just give us a little intro on what does an industry liaison do?
Yeah, sure. So it's a good question, a question I get all the time. I guess what would really help to explain it is a little bit of my background. So about more than 3 years ago, I actually worked for Amazon. I worked there for a little over a year in Tampa and then also Houston. And fantastic job, really love the company, but I got an opportunity to move out to the Philippines and help scale a creative agency called Virtuous Graphics. And it was kind of crazy. I quit my job, moved out to the Philippines, and grew that team that specialized in conversion optimization for Amazon sellers. So everything from photography, video, graphic design, and copywriting. I did that for about almost 2 years. I helped scale that company to 30 plus employees, and we sold that company in September. So one of the things that a tool that we used heavily in that agency was PickFu. And so I didn't make enough money to never work again. So I was looking out at other things that I wanted to do. And I had known the founders, Justin and John. I had met them at a conference in Vegas. And so I pitched them about coming on. And the whole pitch that I gave to them is I said, I think PickFu is the coolest tool, but not that many sellers are still using it. And customer feedback is going to get bigger and bigger. What can I do to come on the team and help spread the word about PickFu and really get more applications of how people can use it for e-commerce and then also off e-commerce as well. So that's kind of my story. That's how I'm here at PickFu. And as industry liaison, I'm very fortunate. My only job is to really work with sellers, get on the phone with them, help to advise them on the different applications of PickFu and make sure they're using the tool in the best way possible.
So before we jump into some of the slides, do you want to give us a little bit of a background on what PickFu does from a idea, and then we'll dive into the solution and more tangible.
Yeah, for sure. So we'll get into a lot of this in the presentation, but just really simply stated, PickFu is instant access to consumer feedback. So basically, if you think about a brand like Nike or Under Armour, when they launch a product, they're going to spend anywhere from 45 to 75 grand per product in consumer research. And it kind of makes sense because they're dedicating a lot of resources to launching the product. And so when PickFu started about 8 years ago, the whole goal was how could we democratize the ability for individual, third-party sellers or small business owners to get that same kind of feedback so they weren't just going with their gut. And there's a lot of really good applications for creative assets, whether it's for your images, whether it's for your packaging, branding, whatever it might be.
Nice. So, traditional retailer, big box retailer, so it's going to spend $45,000 to $75,000 on one product. And you think about a big retailer, a Nike or a big, traditional consumer, and they have hundreds of products or thousands of products, and they're testing these, trying to find the right fit in the market. Can you talk about, and I'm sure you're going to dive into this a little bit more, but you mentioned that you wanted sellers to use PickFu as A/B testing and research is going to become more prevalent. Can you talk about the ideal PickFu customer and who this product is best for?
Sure. So, the thing is with e-commerce sellers, there's a really wide range of e-commerce sellers, from people who are just starting out to people who have been selling for many years. In fact, even legacy brands, legacy corporations moving from brick and mortar and getting actually back into or heavily focusing on e-commerce. So PickFu is a pretty wide range. Obviously, it's something that you're going to want to use when you start, right? Just like you have costs that you would associate with quality assurance, with your 3PL, with all these different things for the business. customer feedback is an important part of that. One thing I will say as well is PickFu is not just for e-commerce. We have other really large verticals in publishing. So imagine if you're going to put out a book, it doesn't matter how good the book is. If the cover looks like garbage, no one's going to ever buy it off a shelf, whether that's physical or digital. And then also really big applications in a big vertical in gaming, game development as well.
Oh, cool. So it sounds like really across the board. And this is great for any entrepreneur, any merchant, any brand owner who really wants to get out, understand how their product's going to fit in the market, and utilize other tools, as you mentioned, to find a lot of success.
Yeah, I'm really excited to dive into this. This presentation is really going to focus on e-commerce. But yeah, do you guys want me to start going
Absolutely.
through?
Let's do it.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. You guys let me know if you can see it.
I think I have to enable something. Your screen. What I think I'm going to do is
Oh no, I guess they might have just hopped out for a second, but I'm sure they will be right back.
Oh, we are
There
here. Yeah, I was trying to figure out how to make this screen bigger. Oh, I can spotlight it. All right. So this is what we'll do, and then who's ever talking will be in the bottom right. So if you want to just make that presentation mode, then we'll be able to hear.
All right, does that all look good on your end?
Yeah, it looks great.
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to jump right in. This whole presentation will take no more than 15 minutes, and then I see there's a lot of people on the live stream. So if anyone has questions afterwards, we can definitely dive in. There's a lot of appendix slides as well. So like we were chatting about earlier, this is how to validate rather with PickFu. So one thing I will say is we don't really give out discount codes, but we do have Payoneer set up as an affiliate. So if you're a first-time PickFu user, I'd highly recommend going to pickfu.com/Payoneer. You'll get 50% off of your first pull. So again, we don't really put those out, but it's definitely something that's good there.
Awesome.
The other thing that I'll say is that this talk is really the basic applications of PickFu. So we're going to go through things like product design, branding, copy, and images. What we're not going to have time to cover are some of the more advanced multi-step applications. So perhaps if people are interested, they can reach out and we can provide that talk, or who knows, maybe we'll be back on another live stream. One thing I will say though, and kind of going into that first introduction, I've literally for more than 2 years helped build that creative agency. I've literally seen hundreds and hundreds of listings. So my only job here at PickFu is to support sellers. So if you have a question based on this presentation, you want an extra set of eyeballs on your listing, feel free to hit me up, Anthony@pickfu.com. So with that being said, let's jump right in. Kind of what is PickFu? And simply stated, PickFu is instant consumer feedback. So when you're an e-commerce seller, you've got your idea, right? And what PickFu allows you to do is to take that idea, you can show it to our panel of more than 10,000 people, all based in the United States, all native English speakers. So you take that idea, you show it to our panel, and you're able to get real feedback. And so the question that I like to ask sellers consistently is, okay, where do you currently go to get feedback? And the common answers I hear are people asking their family, right? So they're berating their spouse and they're saying, hey, babe, what do you think about my logo? What do you think about my product packaging? Another really common one is just people going with their self-intuition, kind of going with their gut. And then I also hear a lot of people asking friends, right? So either people that you know, or again, going up to that random person at Starbucks and saying, hey, what do you think about my main image? And the thing is, there's nothing wrong with any of these methods, right? Going with your family, going with your gut, going and asking random strangers. The thing is, it just might not be right. The feedback, the opinions that you're getting from these other people probably just aren't accurate. And so I was mentioning earlier that you have major brands like a Nike or Under Armour. And so when they're launching a new product, they're spending, like I said, $45,000 to $75,000 per product. And it makes sense as to why, right? They're spending all of this time and all of this effort. By the time they're actually launching a product, by the time they're getting it to market, they don't want to have completely missed the mark on any element of their launch. And so the good news is that you don't need to spend 45 to 75 grand on launching a product or getting consumer feedback. PickFu, the whole reason it was created was we wanted to be able to create a way that people could get that feedback, that they could get an actually statistically significant sample size without needing an audience of their own and to kind of get that feedback. So I'm going to walk through kind of the examples of the most common tests today. Generally, on average, what we're seeing is that people are running usually about about 4 to 7 tests per product, and usually centering around the things we're going to cover in this talk.
So Anthony, before we jump in there, I think a question that I had, if we could just go back to the previous slide, is to think about what you're testing, and maybe we'll get in there, but you can be using PickFu even when you're just thinking of a product to see if this is something that would resonate or sell or work well with what other products you're selling. Do you ever have as a PickFu user, are you able to indicate the demographic you want to touch on, or is it just like here's 10,000 people or 10,000 responses?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually glad you asked that, because we're going to get into that right now.
Perfect.
Actually, one of the coolest things about PickFu is, it really allows you to kind of stop guessing and start knowing, really get some data-driven feedback so that you're making your decisions in a correct way. And so one of the biggest ways that we do that is through what you just mentioned, and that's a targeted audience. So like I said, we've got the panel of more than 10,000 people, all based in the US, but you can actually drill down, and I'm going to show you some examples of this in just a minute, but you can drill down into that target audience. So you can pick things like gender, age range, income, but as well, different things like hobby, what kind of streaming service that they're subscribed to. One of the most common ones we see in FBA or e-commerce is people want to see, I want to target people that have an Amazon Prime membership. And so you can drill down into if they're a wine drinker, if they're a dog owner, what their exercise frequency is. And so we've been building this panel over 8 years, kind of curating these different niche categories and niche groups. So you're not just asking a general audience. You can really get specific if you know who your audience is. The other thing that's really cool about PickFu is that it's super fast. And so if you think about a normal A/B test, not only do you have to have your own audience, right? You have to have traffic that's coming to the listing or to that funnel, but it might take 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks to actually get enough data to make a determination on the A/B test. Because PickFu happens on our own panel, it's crazy fast. Usually the polls are going to be done within about 30 minutes to an hour. So it's very, very rapid. But I'd say where the real magic happens is on this last one here, and that's the detailed response. And so I'm going to show you what the UI looks like in just a second, but people aren't just voting, hey, I like option A, I like option B. They're actually giving you a detailed response as to why they chose option A or option B. The other thing that I want to note as well is that PickFu is 100% private. So I'm going to show a bunch of examples in just a minute. Everything that is on there either has been run by our own team or we have special permission to release those. So everyone on the panel is bound by a confidentiality agreement. I know e-commerce sellers in particular are really concerned about, hey, I don't want my product ideas to get out. And so everything you're seeing, we have permission to share. Now, in terms of what PickFu actually looks like on the inside, the most common tests that people are running are kind of two options, what you would think of in a traditional split test. But it's worth noting that you can actually test up to 8 options at a time. Here, you've got an option where you're testing 4 different options. Like I said, PickFu is more than just votes. It's really detailed feedback. So when I'm running tests, I don't necessarily care so much that option B has 56% of the votes. I care much more about the reason why option B won. And we're going to walk through why that's so helpful and how you can even get more innovative and out-of-the-box ideas just from this feedback. So with that being said, let's jump in. This is kind of the meat and potatoes. These are the most common tests that people are running. Getting back to that earlier question about, who is this used for? It's really for every step along the journey. So like was just said, when you're just doing your initial, unique selling points of the product or just concepting the product overall, you can go in with just a base idea and you can get initial feedback. As well, before you go and spend, we all know how important photos are. We all know how important the multimedia content that you have on your storefronts are. But we also know how expensive that is. And so PickFu can also be very helpful in terms of pre-creative direction. And so that's before you'd even do your photo shoot, before you'd even go and get your graphic design work done, you can go and say, hey, I want to look at the top competitors. I'm going to test their creative assets and get an idea of what's working, what do people like, what do people not like about those, and actually use that for whether you're using an in-house team, whether you're using an agency, you can get some direction on where to go. As well, if you're a much more established seller, you might have been selling a product for quite a significant amount of time, and then all of a sudden you find new competitors are getting into the market, your conversion rate's dropping, and you're like, what should I do? And so you can also do what we call a post-creative audit. So you're re-looking at the existing assets you have, and you're saying, okay, what could I do to actually improve these? How could I make these better and better compete as new players come into the market?
And
So,
Anthony, if I could jump in,
yeah.
I think that's awesome. One of my favorite stories that you hear entrepreneurs say is that they, sat in the parking lot or walked through the store and saw how many people purchased, X cup of coffee or walked out with a certain bag or something in a certain size. It sounds like PickFu, it's really from the investigation stage all the way through the post-purchase has automated a lot of this and made it just as easy as for new merchants and new entrepreneurs to conduct those studies.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good point. And that's absolutely true. And we're going to see a few examples of the whole life cycle right now. So first one we have on here is in terms of branding. So I'm sure a lot of people who are on this live stream right now can probably associate with this, right? So this is a good example. Someone launching a new line of health supplements, and they've got two different brand names. They've got Get Up Labs, Vim Labs, right? And so PickFu can help you kind of determine which one are people more leaning towards. Like I said earlier, you don't even have to have a logo like in the previous example. You can actually just go in and put text straight in. And so maybe you're deciding for this pay-for-use discount club, they tested two names, Island Cash and Island Dollars with a Z. Again, just to get some early ideas and some early thoughts. Now, this one is a really great example because if I were to cover up option A and my creative team was only to have sent me option B, I would say this is a pretty good logo for this natural line of wood furniture. But the reason that option A was the winner overall in the end is because, number one, they liked the way that the font looked. It was more thin, it was more elegant. But what they really liked is that the icon here was much more indicative of what the product and what the brand was supposed to do. Versus option A, is this a bed? Is this a house? You're not really quite sure. And so again, this is really a lot of the value in terms of PickFu is that you might have an option that looks quite good, but then if you test it against an alternate, then you can really see some strong opinions. In terms of product design, this is a big one as well, right? Let's say you've done your product research and you know that this breakfast in bed tray, this is a hot seller, it's trending. But how do you know what color wood grain? Should it be the dark wood grain or should it be the light wood grain? This, you'll see option B and option C. This is actually part of a 4-part test with 4 options rather, but you're trying to sell this home sweet home sign, right, for your garage. But which one should we actually go with? And the reason that option B was the winner here is because people wanted to see the United States flag inside of the heart, right? It was a little bit less busy. Again, very nuanced, very small changes. But if you're about to go and launch this product and your minimum order quantity is 1,000 of these units, this is something that you probably want to get right. As well, a lot of people, especially in the e-commerce space, they're trying to add in these product inclusions, these product bundles. And so PickFu can actually help you determine, is the bundled item that you're adding in, does it actually make the product more valuable, or is it just a bonus item that we're putting in because it's cheap? And so a good example of that would be, I've got one of these right here. It's this webcam cover, and a really good example of doesn't cost a lot to add it to the product, but really helps the product to work better versus adding some fitness resistance bands in with the leggings. It's a related product, but it doesn't really actually help the leggings work any better.
Right.
Going back to as well, you might find yourself in this scenario. You've researched a product, you know that eco-friendly plates are selling, but what's the quantity that you should actually sell it in? A 25 pack, a 50 pack, 100 or 300 pack? Again, if this is your first time taking this product to market, this is not something that you want to get wrong if you're trying to sell it in a 25 pack. And in reality, people are really looking to purchase these for a 100 pack. What I like to do is when I'm launching and designing products that I'm selling is I like to break down the product into as many different individual components as possible and say, how could I change these things from either a quality or a visual perspective to make it stand out from competitors? So even going in with a product design and testing things like different zipper colors or different zipper types, material, thread colors, straps, handles, all sorts of things.
And Anthony, just before we jump on from there, and if you did I think you said you could at most you could have 8 options, and if you had 8 products or 8 sweaters, for example, in 8 different colors, and the response came back that 2 or 3 of them were at really high votes and the other 5 were lower, it could give you an indicator that you don't need to pick just one, that these top three might be potentially good sellers for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And as well, remember, it's not just about what actually won. Maybe there's three different colors, but what I might even do there is to go back in and say, I mean, with a sweater, I guess it would be a solid color, but sometimes it's a combination of these options.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, like when we were talking about the logo earlier, it's like people might like to see the tree, but what if there was actually a better version of an icon that would be even more indicative? And so it's really about not just seeing what won, but looking at why the thing won and trying to learn from that.
And my follow-up question is, if you this week had two logos for someone to look at or a group to look at, and it was A or B, and A really worked, but you thought that there was an opportunity that you might offer something different, can you reach out to that same audience again to see, like, the ones that liked this one, do they still like this one, or do they like this new offering that I brought in?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can run subsequent tests. You can even filter back down to that same audience. The other thing that's really interesting inside of the UI is you have an option there that you can actually ask a follow-up question to the individual person. And so sometimes someone might give you a bit of feedback and you're not quite sure either what it means or you want to ask a follow-up question. So you can actually ask that specific person, hey, what about if I changed this aspect? And you can get even more detail there.
Awesome. It's really thorough.
Cool. So I'm going to keep rolling here. The next one is a huge one, and that's product packaging. And so product packaging is obviously super important because not only is it every single time that you're printing it, it's costing you money. It's probably one of the first things that the customer is actually going to see, but it's also usually a little bit labor intensive to change. So you're probably not going to change your product packaging until you've completely sold through whatever the cycle of inventory that you're on. And so a lot of people think about drastic changes in product packaging, but PickFu actually, especially in a digital environment where people's eyes are drawn to contrasting colors and things that are more vibrant, you'll see here that the difference in this peat mud mask between option A and option B is very small. It's just a very small color change, but there was a resounding popularity towards option B as people were saying it looked more premium. It was a contrast, it caught their eyes a little bit better. This is probably one of my favorite examples. The reason I put it in this presentation is because, again, this is for an immune support supplement, so something that's supposed to help you stay healthy. And again, if I were to get options B or C from my agency, I'd say, okay, both of these look really, really good. And in fact, if you look and you see, okay, option A and B have very similar in terms of the response that they got, but when you actually look into the reasons why option A is the overall winner, it's very interesting. And so the first thing is that people in option C, they really liked the list format of option A and option B. They didn't really like how this was so blocky. But the reason option A was the overall winner is because people already know what an immune support supplement does. They don't need to see that it works at the cellular level, that it has a healthy respiratory system. They don't need to see any of that. What people were really curious to see with this immune support is they were looking to see certain ingredients, right? We all expect zinc or vitamin C, certain ingredients that are going to be in the immune support supplement. And so when you look at option A, the first thing that your eyes are going to see is this helping you to overcome that objection, understanding exactly what is in the product versus I don't necessarily need to see the brand name front and center. I don't even need to see the immune support so clearly. I want to see what's in the product. I want to see that it's made in America and how many capsules I'm getting. So again, things that you might not be able to actually pick up if you were sent these different options, things that you might not think of independently, but when you look at the feedback, become quite clear. In terms of copywriting, this is a big one as well. Now, I will say PickFu is generally, people are gravitating much more towards using this for visual things because, as we know, copywriting does come a lot down to what is going to be search engine optimized or what's going to help you in terms of ranking and actually getting volume. But there are a couple really interesting use cases of PickFu for copywriting. And first is just something simple like testing your description or testing your bullet points. Now, it's not much of a surprise here that option A is beating option B as this has much more detail. But one thing that not a lot of people think about, and this is a little bit more specific towards Amazon, but it really works on any platform where you do have a bullet point centric description here. And that's what we call leading words. And so most people know this, but when a shopper is scrolling, especially on Amazon, they're only going to make it down to your first 3 bullet points. And when they do get to those first 3 bullet points, they're probably going to skim. And so optimizing the leading words looks at these words right here. We've got powerful wind and quietness, and this is for an electric desk fan. And so essentially, when you're optimizing your leading words, you're saying, if someone is only going to read these first few words, is that going to be a really clear indication of what the rest of the bullet point is actually about? And so again, this is a top seller for this electric desk fan, and you really have to ask yourself, are the words powerful wind and quietness really the best possible words we could use to describe that bullet point? People use this a lot with their title. Again, you might be using some kind of product research or some kind of SaaS tool to tell you what words should be included in your title. But how do you know just even should we put the brand name in front or should we actually not put the brand name in front? How could changing the order of the words change the whole meaning of that title based on what's cut off on certain mobile or desktop layouts? What's the most important information you want to have up front versus what can you have later down in the title? When I'm working with my creative teams, I always ask them to say, or to create in terms of copywriting, come up with one version that's has a tone of voice that's informative and come up with another version that's humorous. Again, if you're putting in a description, upload both of these into PickFu and say, okay, what are your thoughts? Which one is more effective? Which one is going to catch the emotions much more of the customer? The last one that I will kind of wrap up with here today is images. Another huge application of where people use PickFu. And so when I first started selling on Amazon, you could get away with an image like this. This is for reusable grocery bags, right? It's clean, it's symmetrical, it looks good. But if you compare it to this image, right, it's really not much of a comparison because it shows not only what the product is, but what it does, what it can actually hold, right? It shows down here that this bag actually doesn't have holes, so these coffee beans aren't going to come out. You can see here it's got this quantity decal. I don't have to, my brain doesn't have to register how many am I actually getting here. It's very clear. Not to mention just the visual and aesthetic appeal. If you're scrolling through a bunch of search results for this product, this is very well contrasted. You've got the orange, you've got the yellow, you've got the purple, right? And so this
is a lot of groceries.
Yeah, it is a lot of groceries. This is where you can make some really big gains. And actually at my previous agency, we did a lot of testing with main images for Amazon and using PickFu. And the whole hypothesis was, could we actually, by making an image more engaging, more visually appealing, could we increase the click-through rate, right? And it's not rocket science as to why this works, right? This is an apple peeler, an apple slicer. But if I'm only looking at option B, is this a tool that I'm going to find in my workshop? Like, it's not as clear versus this. Okay, this tool is specifically used for removing the exterior skin from an apple. Infographics are a really big application as well. And so this is a very interesting example because, believe it or not, both of these images are trying to do the exact same thing. They're an infographic that's trying to overcome a large objection that we have with Bluetooth headphones, and that's how easy is it to actually pair the Bluetooth headphones to your phone. And so again, both of these are trying to do the exact same thing, but when we dive into the feedback, a lot of people are saying, okay, what is all of this? Like, I mean, what is this thing even here? This is a very clean backdrop. It shows the hand for a scale of actually how large the item is. You can see the phone screen here. It's got very clear and easy text. Now, the interesting part though, is that when we were looking at the feedback, these are 2 top sellers for these Bluetooth headphones. And you can do some quick product research to see they're selling a huge amount of units every single day and every single month. But the feedback was that even people were a little bit confused. What is Tozo T10R? Is that the brand name? There's a lot of different optimizations we could even make with this image to make it more clear. The other thing that's very interesting about this, kind of what we were talking about earlier, is that in terms of when you actually look to see how the votes break down by different demographics and age groups, you'll find that younger people really like option B. But believe it or not, older people, an older demographic, especially in the 45 plus age range, really were heavily skewed towards option A. So even though we might sit here and say option A does not look good, maybe you're actually trying to sell these Bluetooth headphones to a 45 plus audience and maybe moving into this direction, maybe not quite this exact image, but a version of this could actually be very beneficial. Like I said earlier, you can use PickFu and you can test up to 8 options at a time. This is, again, another infographic example of 3 infographics trying to do the exact same thing. They're trying to show you the before and after of what your face is going to look like if you use this jade roller. And so it's very interesting because, again, these are 3 top sellers of this product. These people are making a lot of money selling this product. And I think there's elements of each of these that are potentially good, but then there's also elements that are pretty bad. So like this looks very creepy.
Very scary.
Very, very
your face is peeling off. I don't want to use that.
Exactly, right? And so I'm not probably suggesting anyone go and try to sell a jade roller, maybe a little bit past its peak here. But if I was going to go back and try to compete, these are the top 3 competitors. I could just use the feedback here and come up with a dramatically enhanced version that takes the best elements, but also removes the worst elements from these 3 images to create my own infographic. So I'll wrap up here. Like I said earlier, customer feedback, especially for third-party sellers, when I first started selling on Amazon, you could import any product from Alibaba, any product from China, put it up on your private label account, and you could really crush it and make a lot of money. That's really not the case anymore. Amazon e-commerce in general is just getting more and more competitive, and that's not going to slow down. And so what sellers really should start doing is think about how customer research actually should take a part in their business overall. And so think about, before you go and launch a product, before you're spending all of this money on pay-per-click advertising, think about, is the whole basis for my creative assets, is this just the first thing that was sent to me from my creative team? Or even potentially worse, is the only person who's given me feedback on my product packaging or my images, is it my spouse? Is it my partner? And so what I will say is, if you're sitting there and you're kind of like, hey, I'm not sure if this actually has a realistic application in my business. I'm not sure if customer feedback is right for me. Look, don't take my word for it. There's a little company you might have heard of called Thrasio. What Thrasio does is they have Amazon brands, they enhance, they optimize the brands, and as the value of those brands grow, the value of their fund grows. And so they just set a record for being the fastest profitable company to reach unicorn status, $1 billion in valuation. And we have a really good case study that we did with them. They've been using PickFu for quite a long time. And it's all about this brand, Angry Orange, about how they bought the brand at $2 million. And just from making changes to their product packaging that you'll see here on the screen, using PickFu to iterate, come up with those different options to get that feedback, they're able to create this new product packaging and grow that brand from $2 million to more than $20 million in sales. So you can go and take a look. We have a really great testimonial video on our YouTube channel. You'll see it right there. And you've got the VP of Creative, John Hefter, at Thrasio, saying pretty much for the past 2 years, every major creative decision that they make, they use PickFu. So again, don't take my word for it, but this stuff does work. With that being said, that's where I'll wrap up here. Again, if you guys have not used PickFu yet, it's not just for e-commerce. It can be used for a variety of business applications. I'm sure we kind of turned on the light bulb a little bit in the people's watching head, and you can use the code PAYANYEAR and get 50% off of your first poll. That's it.
Awesome. And, like I mentioned in the beginning, I think this is something that you can do right now. Maybe not change your product labels or anything like that, but definitely in terms of your listing photos or potentially your copywriting on your listings if you're selling on Amazon, and make little tweaks and changes to your business to make sure that you are appealing to your target demographic. And this is things that you can do on October 7th and still be primed, pun intended, for Prime Day next week, and see and reap the benefits. So, Anthony, what is the turnaround time on a typical response?
Yeah, sure. So normal PickFu test is normally going to be done in about 30 minutes to an hour. So it's really fast. And
more on my side, how do you get that many people to answer that quickly?
So that's one of the things we really have been working on for the past few years. We use a third-party testing platform, so they have a really large pool of people who are answering these. But what kind of makes PickFu very unique is we've been, over the past 8 years, training this machine learning algorithm that essentially when people give responses, we can detect, because when you actually run a poll as a seller or as a business owner, you can actually click helpful or not helpful. So if you're thinking this is a garbage response, I don't think this is good, you can click not helpful and it'll automatically find a new person and it'll give you a new answer. But what that algorithm has been training over the years is that when people give a helpful response, they actually are incentivized even more with additional bonuses. And then people who give unhelpful responses are removed from the panel. And so, again, it's not entirely our panel. We use a third party, but we do take really careful work to curate and make sure everyone there, they understand that they're helping real businesses and that they should be giving detailed and really well thought out responses. And then we also have really instructed them that the people who are using this, they want quick responses. And so they're incentivized to answer fast. And in fact, if they're not answering fast, then again, they're kind of filtered out through the panel.
So if I'm a seller or brand owner, and I want to launch a few new products, maybe I have my core line, and I have a few add-ons that I think will be successful, not necessarily bundled with the SKU, but just add-ons. So it sounds like this is a great tool that I can get quick responses fast. I can test those 4 to 7 products. It's not going to cost anywhere between $45,000 and $75,000 like traditional houses, but I can really get valued research from my core demographic of who I believe I want to sell it to. Or if not, I saw earlier you mentioned that there's the general population too. And it seems like that can really help you figure out who your core demographic is going to be on your products you're launching.
Yeah, that's super right, Ben. And it really does come down to look at what you're doing right now in terms of a business owner, in terms of someone who's selling a product, whatever it might be. And it is very inexpensive. It starts at $1 per response. So most PickFu tests are going to be about $50 to run for $1 per response, 50 people, $50. But yeah, think about what you're currently doing. And if your best option, if you're thinking, I've got a business that I want to scale to 6, 7, 8 figures, and your strategy for how you're going to grow this thing is to go and ask your friends and family, what do you think about product packaging? It really could, and a lot of people that are selling, most people are not selling mass market products. They're selling a very niche product. And I'd be willing to bet that most sellers are not their target audience. It's just the fact of the matter. I know I've sold products that were the farthest thing from anything I have experience with. So how do you even make those decisions on what that person is going to want? You'd have to be very lucky a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think luck, skill, and then a lot of hard work plays into it as well. So Anthony, we really want to say thank you so much. I think TJ and I both learned an exceptional amount about A/B testing and the services that PickFu can provide for sellers, entrepreneurs, or those just getting off the ground with a great idea. So as we always do with all of our guests, we'd love to give you the final word here.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm very fortunate. My only job here at PickFu is to support sellers. So anyone who has a question, please feel free to reach out, Anthony at PickFu. The other thing I will say is that for the first time ever, we just released bundled pricing options. And the reason we did that is because we had a lot of people coming to us saying, hey, Q4 is right around the corner. I want to run multiple tests back to back, but I want a discount for buying in bulk. So we just released those on our website. It's the best deal that we've ever released at PickFu. So you can check those out, pickfu.com/bundles. And if you're trying to optimize some things, make some small tweaks, it's definitely the best value right now.
Absolutely. And Anthony, as you included in the slides, I put your email across the bottom there. So if anyone wants to get in touch with you, they absolutely can. It seems like via anthony@pickfu.com. So again, Anthony, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, unfortunately, we will not be having an episode of the State of E-commerce, but the reason for that is we have a much bigger event going on. It's called Beyond, and it's a 24-hour digital summit put on by Payoneer. So it's what we do here in a half hour times 48. So you'll have plenty of content from speakers all around the world. You can still register for that event. You can just Google Payoneer Beyond 24 or follow the link there to register. And you'll receive all the notifications and see the agenda and speakers. Over 120 speakers from over 150 countries. So truly a really global event. Anthony, again, thank you so much. For Ben and myself, have a good day.
See you later.